Hello, everyone. My name is David Beals. I'm the Digital Scholarship Partner at KSL, and thank you for coming to the Freedman Fellows Faculty Forum. Usually we do these in April. This is the first time we're doing it at the beginning of the semester, so a little bit of a schedule's change, but the content is the same. We're still going to hear from our fellows and what they've been able to discover over the past year. But before we get to that, we'd like to take some time for some introductory remarks from University Librarian Yolanda Cooper.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Yolanda Cooper, and I have the pleasure and honor of being the Vice Provost and University Librarian here at Case Western Reserve University. And I want to welcome everybody here in the center to the forum, and I also want to welcome everybody online. Contributions from CWRU alumni Samuel and Marion Freedman and their sons Howard and Walter led to the initial creation and continued development of the Freedman Center for Digital Scholarship, this exceptional venue we have here around us. The Freedman family have generously given their support and engagement over the years, making it possible for Kelvin Smith Library to enable innovation and provide support and expertise in the development of new forms of scholarship. One particular outcome from this generosity is the focus on this afternoon's event, the Faculty Fellows, and tomorrow, the Student Fellows program, which I hope you all can come to. At this time, I'd like to make a special acknowledgement in honor of Walter Freedman, who passed away this August. Walter was a huge advocate of the Freedman Center and a great thought partner in its development. It was an absolute pleasure working with Walter, and we benefited greatly from his valuable input. Walter was also very engaged in the Kelvin Smith Library broadly and participated as a member of our visiting committee since 2008. Walter will be missed by all the staff, but he will stay in our thoughts as we consider future developments for the center going forward. I also want to take a moment to thank our new director, Kate Osment. Kate is a little over a year old here at CWRU, but she and her team have worked tremendously to engage stakeholders, do benchmarking, and really evaluate today's emerging technology to redesign the center and the new lab that's in the back of the room there. I hope if you're really interested, you might want to come and ask one of the team to give you a tour. There's a lot of possibilities there, and it's really kind of a fun way to spend some time, actually. For now, our program today will allow you to meet this year's faculty and gain an overview of their work as Freedman Fellows in the past year. You'll also hear of their partnership with the Digital Scholarship team because they work directly with the fellows on their project. I want to thank the fellows this year for their participation in the program. I want to thank the team and the librarians from the research and engagement area who have also been involved in these programs. I want to thank the person who arranged this, which is probably Hallie. And I do want to also thank the program coordinator this year, which is David Beals. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to David so you can hear more about the projects. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much. Just make a quick introduction of our first fellow, Dr. Clara Pelfrey, who is a professor in the Department of Medical Education and the CTSC Director of Evaluation. And she's going to talk to us about assessing leadership programs. Do leadership programs really create future leaders?
Thank you, David, for that introduction, and welcome, everyone. So every leadership program on earth probably asks this question: do leadership programs create future leaders? We are studying the Flex Professional Development or Leadership Development Program for women faculty in the CWRU School of Medicine with my colleagues, Rashna Gurudu, who's an undergraduate student at Case, Jean Kusina, who's faculty at University of Toledo, Joshua Gerlich, who's in both the nursing school and the Weatherhead School, and Phil Kola, who's in the Weatherhead School. So the problem is that assessing long-term impact of leadership development programs is really challenging. And the reason it's challenging is most programs like this require you to do surveys of participants and alumni, and little by little, people's survey responses drop off over time. Low survey response rates, you also get faculty who move on, and then you have attrition, and their email no longer works, so you lose that long-term data. And when you have missing data, of course, the data that you do have runs the risk of over or underestimating the effectiveness of your leadership program. And all of you know this, becoming a leader takes many, many years, and we just lose participants to follow-up. Even if they might want to be a participant in our surveys, we lose them to follow-up. So we wanted to ask 3 questions. First, can we identify a low-cost or no-cost way of tracking participants' career trajectories? And why would we do this? Who would we do this for? For program staff, for evaluators of programs, and particularly for nonprofit and educational programs. Not a lot of money spent on evaluation, so that's why the low-cost, no-cost part. Can we measure the proportion of Flex participants who've successfully become leaders and track their leadership outcomes using AI? And finally, if we're successful in doing that, can we measure leadership outcomes for a set of controls for comparison to our Flex leadership participants? So our approach was this. First, we wanted to explore various tools, digital tools, for longitudinal tracking of outcomes. And one of the first things that came to mind was LinkedIn. And an associated tool of LinkedIn is called LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Tools like that tend to talk to customer relationship management programs like Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics. Turns out all of those are incredibly expensive. And we also found out that the LinkedIn Sales Navigator changed their rules on us midstream. So formerly they were individual focused and we could learn information on individuals. Then they changed the rules and now they are company focused. So we had to abandon that and start using AI, and I'm glad we did. We'll talk to you about that. We went on to identify leadership outcomes of our Flex alumni using AI, and then doing a process of validation, data cleaning, and eventually we want to compare the outcomes we found by AI to the data we already had from surveys that we had administered to Flex participants. And then over time, of course, we want to improve on that with prompt engineering, take our newly refined AI methods, and apply them to the controls. So what's the relevance of all this? Every leadership training program and out there really wants to show that they're a successful program. How do they do that? They show that the participants in their program made something of themselves, right? They became leaders, they got a great job, all those sorts of outcomes. So if we're successful using AI with this method could save programs time and money on tracking outcomes of program graduates. So what is the Flex Leadership Development Program? It was designed to help women faculty in the School of Medicine prepare for leadership opportunities. They get things like emotional competencies, communication, executive presence, all the sorts of training you would expect in a leadership program. But this program was specifically designed to look at the challenges women face navigating academic medicine. And those are effective mentoring, isolation, and of course, mid and early career attrition. And this program was also designed to really focus on the individual strengths and personal goals of the participants. So the target population were women faculty from CWRU and all the other 4 big medical institutions in Cleveland. And the program was designed with input from this long list in the yellow box there of individuals who helped design the program, including Weatherhead and other people, to really make the program a good one. So somehow my slides got changed. I apologize for that. It looks like it's written over this, but it says the FLEX program demographics at the start of FLEX. So that's important. These aren't demographics of the people today. They were when they joined the program. And there were 187 participants from 12 different FLEX cohorts from 2012 to 2024. So the basic point is in the blue bubbles on the right-hand side. 90% of the people who joined FLEX were assistant professors. 2/3 of them came from the 2 biggest medical institutions in Cleveland, UH and the Cleveland Clinic. And more than 80% of them had an MD degree. And then additionally, we looked at things like their cultural background. We found that almost 1/3 of them were women of color, defined as non-white, and almost 80% of them had worked at CWU for 10 years or less. So I want to go back to those surveys that I mentioned. We have delivered quite a few surveys to the participants. We started the evaluation in 2017, so everyone prior to that got sort of one survey, outcome survey, and then subsequently at the end of each FLEX year, there was an end of FLEX survey. And then there have been some subsequent outcome surveys delivered. But we defined leadership 2 ways. One was a very objective definition, as defined by the American Association of Medical Colleges, the AAMC. And you can see the list of titles, leadership titles, that are administrative leadership titles in academic medicine that they defined. So if the individual had those, then we know they had AAMC. The other type of position was a self-defined position. So we asked them local, regional, national, or international separately. We asked them if they had leadership positions in those arenas, and that could include presidents, vice presidents, secretaries, any kind of position in a national or regional organization. But we let the individual define that for themselves, and we didn't try to pass judgment on that. So this is showing you the survey results that we got, or at least the survey completion, to show you that even surveys have lots of missing data. So the earlier FLEX cohorts, as I mentioned, had received 3 outcome surveys over the years. The later cohorts, the more recent ones, have only received 1 or 2 surveys. So survey 1 was what we call the end of FLEX survey at the end of each time they completed FLEX. And we had a 72% response rate for that one. The 2022 survey, outcome survey, we had a 54% response rate. And then the most recent 2024 survey, we had only a 39% response rate. So you can see the response rates are dropping off over time. Overall is a little misleading. 74% took at least 1 survey, but they didn't all complete the survey. And so we have a lot of missing data. So, and then my next slide looks like it got messed up too. Something about sending it and transmitting it. I apologize for that. But what this is showing you is on the x-axis are the different cohorts from 2012 to 2023. And it's really hard to read the numbers under them, but those are the number of individuals, respondents from that cohort. And we've plotted it on a percent scale up to 100%, just so that we normalize for the different sizes of the cohorts. And what you can see in dark blue are the number of individuals who checked that they had one of those AAMC positions. And the orange, of course, is the self-defined positions, which, again, we didn't judge and we didn't, pick and choose. We took their word for it. And you can see pretty easily that the earlier FLEX cohorts, longer ago, have had more time to achieve leadership positions. So this is the data which we're comparing AI to. And again, this is only partial data. We're missing a lot of data. And we're trying to fill in that missing data with data from AI searches. So our AI methods included evaluating the AI platforms based on the accuracy of leadership role titles. So those AAMC position titles had to be accurate. Accuracy of dates. So this had to be after they completed the FLEX program. And of course, other things that it ended up evaluating were the prompt adherence, how well it answered the prompt that we gave it, how much accessible free bandwidth the AI had. Some of them, again, we're trying the low-cost, no-cost versions, not the $200 a month versions. So, yeah. And then the response time, some of them took hours and hours, and the comparative output consistency. So, did the answer for the first person we tested it sort of look the same as the answer for the last person we tested? We did look at 5 different AI platforms. Our purpose was not to find, the best in the whole world as AI platforms, but the best that works for us for this study that would be consistent through testing all the different participants. So you can see the list of them. They're sort of the usual players. And then the criteria for choosing the AI platforms, again, we wanted the low-cost option, so we were trying to go for free or non-subscription. In the end, we opted for the ChatGPT 4.1. This was earlier in the year, and had institutional access through CASE. It had the fewest restrictions for us repeating, participant after participant, and it was conveniently available. It did, for us, the ChatGPT 4.1 yielded the most timely results, and by that I mean the amount of time it took it to come back with an answer after we gave it, and our prompt was a fairly extensive prompt. And also the number of prompt repetitions that we could do in a single day. And it turns out there's a big difference between AIs at night, when no one's awake, and AI during the day. But we wanted to actually get some sleep, so we only did daytime or evenings. And our standardized prompt directed the AI to confirm their graduation year from FLEX. So that was a form of validity. And we also wanted to search web sources for various administrative and professional leadership positions that they'd held after they completed FLEX. We asked in the prompt for it to look for up to 10 different positions with exact titles, dates, and also to give us a verification URL so that we could confirm that data. And then we formatted the results to allow it to be pasted into a master spreadsheet. So this is sort of the crux of the data, and I'm going to focus everything on the 2 highlighted columns. So what we have here are sort of the amount of positions that we were able to find by AI. So for the 187 participants, we had 502, you'll see in the raw data column, 502 different AI positions that it found. So we called that 100%. And then the data cleaning process goes down the column. So then we removed duplicates, then we removed what we considered invalid positions. They weren't consistent with the AAMC positions, and invalid URLs that didn't point to anything, 404 not found. We don't know if they were out of date or if it was hallucinating or what it was doing, but we couldn't make it work. And then finally, non-corroborating URLs. So it was a real URL, but it didn't confirm the data it had just given us. So, and what we were left with out of that 502 was 179 that we could say were real or we confirmed. That's only a 36%. That's not great. But that's what we got, okay? And then on the very far right-hand side, RedCap Survey is a tool we used for surveying the participants. And these numbers represent the AI positions that we had also confirmed because the individual gave us that on a survey. So we considered that the source of truth. And you can see at the bottom, 57 of the 179 were confirmed. We'd already knew that from survey. But 122 of them we didn't already have. That's 68% of that 179 that were brand new to us. We didn't know. And it's not because the surveys were bad or wrong or anyone lied on them. It's just because we had all that missing data, right? Someone who only took it right when they finished Flex, but they didn't take it 5 years later, we're missing those 5 years of potential leadership positions. So that's kind of interesting. So why is the AI valuable here? We're not about comparing AI tools. We really want to reveal above and beyond what we've already found by survey. We want to enhance the accuracy and the sustainability of evaluation. And evaluation's all about data collection, right? Accurate data collection. We want to fill in gaps in traditional evaluation, which is pretty much all surveys. And we want to provide a replicable model, potentially, for other leadership programs. So the broader impact of this, it does help us understand how development programs support leadership advancement if we can show that the participants actually become leaders. And it supports the institution's investment in those leadership programs. It does offer an additional tool in the evaluation toolbox or in the program staff toolbox for tracking program outcomes. And it could be potentially transformative for evaluating leadership initiatives, particularly for looking at long-term outcomes. We do have limitations in our study. As we all know, the AI algorithms are constantly changing. Even with the very same prompt, they're changing. The AI searches are not live internet searches. They're only of archived and cached data out there. So they may be out of date. And we can't conclude that if the AI doesn't find any positions, a lack of positions means that there are no leadership positions, because we've already shown you the AI sourcing of the URLs is sometimes faulty. So our next steps. We're going to improve on our prompt engineering, improve the hit rate, try to decrease the errors so that we can improve on that 36% rate. That's pretty low. We want to improve on that. We want to try a stepwise approach with the prompt engineering. I think they call it short throw prompting or something like that, to increase the accuracy. And after improving the prompt, then we want to go back and redo all 187 of our Flex to confirm and verify that we actually have improved it. Then, when we finally have a method we think is better than what we currently have, we can go and test some controls. We don't have a source of truth for those controls. They were never surveyed because they weren't part of the program. So we have to have the best method we can until we test the controls. So thank you very much, and I'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. And speaking as folks who followed you along the way, we were really interested in the different methods you were trying and the different models. And I feel like we learned some stuff too about Gemini versus ChatGPT, especially times of day. That was a lot to learn. But I'm just curious, if you're thinking at the project, you clearly know where you want to go with it. So you've done an internal calculation that it's worth the time and energy to try to figure out how to automate this to some degree versus the manual searching that you could perhaps assign to someone on your team. So how are you making that calculation, and did you see like the 122 new results is worth the time and energy, or how are you managing that?
I think it is worth the time and energy. The automation part, it's a little further in the future. We still have to get the prompts right, but I think there are ways to automate it. I'm no AI engineer, so I don't really know how to do that. But I do think that it's worth it because the missing data we have from surveys means you can never really know the answer to the initial question, do the leadership programs produce leaders? You can never really answer that until you have data on maybe 80% of your people or more. And we're still missing a fair amount of data. There were 46 individuals that the AI didn't find a single thing online. I mean, we've probably all Googled ourselves, right? We know we're online. We were surprised at that. But yeah, I think it's worth pursuing. But thank you for that question. Yeah.
Kind of a related question. I and many people, I think, are fascinated by kind of the AI hallucination phenomenon, and I imagine that's sort of what propped up with some of your incorrect URLs that I would throw at you. So one question is, like, were you expecting that level, like having to say, like, oh wait, no, that URL doesn't exist? Was that a surprise? And then how much kind of extra effort was it to like correct for that hallucination?
Yeah, really good question. I think we were a little bit surprised from 502 to 176, like, wow, 36%. But then it was explained to me that the searches that the AI does are not live. I didn't even know that. Then it made sense. Like, okay, we might be looking at out-of-date stuff that may be taken down, and now it's a 404 not found, right? So it was on somebody's form somewhere on the internet, but as a live URL, it doesn't work anymore. And the ones that, I hate to ascribe human characteristics to an AI, but it seemed lazy, honestly. Like it would give you ccf.org. That's not very specific. That's not going to get you specifically to this person and their leadership position. So those were ones that were non-corroborating. They were real. They just didn't take you where you needed to go. So again, I don't know why I did that. I would love, if anyone knows why, please tell me.
And a little part two, thank you. Did you ever run into issues where people have the same name, but it's not the person you're looking for? It's like you Google me, I'm a Swedish perfumer, and I'm very famous.
Oh, very cool.
Was that a thing that cropped up at all?
Not really, not with this group. Well, okay, I take that there were a couple common names, but most of these women did not have common names. But I think that will be a big problem with the controls. And that's why we have to improve the prompt by giving it anchors to that individual. And to me, an anchor is much more than their name. It's what institution they're from, their institutional email, their department, just give it lots of anchors to the very specific individual. So if there are names, but it finds more of those anchors, it's going to point to that person. Yeah.
Since you were working on this program with people who've been participants in the Flex program, this is kind of a weird question, but was there any question on whether you needed to be using IRB or something like that?
Oh, we've applied for an IRB, yes. Yeah. The material online, fortunately, all of it is online, therefore it's public. So the IRB gives you an exemption for that. It's not human subjects because it's all public information.
That was my question. Right?
Yeah,
Like,
okay.
Where does it fall on that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pelfrey. Our next presenter is Dr. Aisha Bell Hardaway, and she's the professor of law and the director of a social justice institute here at CASE. And she's going to talk to us about oral histories and mappings, the Winston Willis project.
Thank you.
I'm gonna get my timer because I actually really love this project and would talk much longer than you guys want to be here. So thank you so much to the Freedman fellows for this, to the library staff. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. I've learned so much just about our university and what's available, and I'm really, really encouraged for the opportunity to do something that's completely unrelated to, well, that's not true, but birthed out of something unrelated to my profession as a lawyer and a law professor. And that is this oral history project, the Oral Histories and Mapping Project about Mr. Winston Willis. I've done this work, although the staff who created these slides only put my name on here. I've done this work with a group of people. Thank you to Jarrett here at the library for helping me, to Allison George, who's the department administrator at SJI, Ali Reza Nurani Dargiri, who is our fellow, and we have a resident, a research assistant, a student research assistant, Amrita Saini, who they've all been really invaluable to me over the last 19, almost 20 months now. So this project was really birthed out of SJI's Research and Refresh series, an opportunity for us to hear from both scholars on campus and community scholars external to campus about social justice related issues that are of interest to them. And we had the great benefit of having Ms. Andra Willis Carrasco join us in March of 2024 via Zoom. This picture that you see here in the lecture hall is in the moot court room at the law school. It was a Friday at 1 o'clock, and the room was packed. Just off of our social media posting that we were going to be hosting her and talking about Winston Willis. Between March of, well, let me say, so she did a book talk. Who is Andra? Andra is Winston's baby sister, who, with his assistance, wrote a memoir about his life here in Cleveland, Ohio. And the community interest in her book was palpable, literally palpable. It sparked a desire in me and another lifelong Clevelander, Donald Black Jr., who is the videographer working with us on this project, to capture the memories that we heard in the room, but also to dig deeper and to understand more about who Winston was and what happened to his businesses. And so between March of 2024 and today, we've done a number of things. And which slide am I at? Sorry, I'm at the wrong slide. Let me go. We've done a number of things. We hired research assistants, as I mentioned, extensively searched library archives and collections, and spent more than 50 hours across 15 individual interviews learning more about what Winston Willis, who he was, and what his businesses meant to this area specifically, and I'll talk more about where we're talking about, the geographic location, but to Black Cleveland more generally. And so it has been a labor of love, and so let me go back here, and I'm just going to toggle just a little bit. So who is Winston Willis? There we are. Right, so Winston's born in what we learned during this oral history project of more than 15 interviews in this data archive. Winston Willis was born in Montgomery, Alabama, where I've been spending a lot of time lately because I'm also developing a racial justice course in that space. But he's born in Montgomery, Alabama, and raised partially in Detroit, Michigan, before coming to Cleveland at the age of 22. When he comes to Cleveland at the age of 22, he has a very, very, very strong entrepreneurial spirit. And there are a lot of legendary stories that we heard during the Oral History Project. But the first thing that he does when he comes to Cleveland, and I hope this is where I am here. Almost. All right, y'all. The first thing that he does when he comes to Cleveland is that he opens a place called the Jazz Temple. The Jazz Temple is, and this is with money that he earned from being a pool shark. Interestingly enough, some of it from one of our law school graduates who's a lion of a criminal defense lawyer, James Willis, who's 99 years old and can carry a story like nobody's business. He talked to me for 4.5 hours, Attorney Willis did. They're not related. They thought they were cousins for a period of time, but they are not. But he absolutely was Winston's criminal defense lawyer after Winston took money from him at the pool hall and used that money to apparently open the Jazz Temple. The Jazz Temple is located, if you know where Mocha is, we all know where Mocha is, on the corner of Euclid, Ford, Mayfield, that intersection. That is where the Jazz Temple set. This is an ad featured in our own, it was called Reserve Tribune, the November 15th, 1962 edition of that newspaper. And the week before this publication, Winston had opened the Jazz Temple, and he hosted his first guest, who was Art Blakey, a renowned drummer. The Jazz Temple was a coffee house that also served food. One of the articles in our student newspapers said that although they served food, that's not really what their specialty was. They served jazz. And in a little more than a year of being in business, they had the likes of Dinah Washington, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Red Fox, Richard Pryor, and more perform at the location, and a host of famous people, including Malcolm X and MLK reportedly, have visit the place. But it's really a place where students from Case, Reserve, Western, whatever, right? Those were the names of our institution at that time. But also John Carroll are frequenting the Jazz Temple, along with Black Clevelanders. So this is what the Jazz Temple looked like at the intersection of Mayfield and Euclid. And let me see if this works. I want to be able to give you all a taste of the oral history projects. I hope it works.
He paid people all over the country to come to him, particularly when he had his Jazz Temple, and his Jazz Temple around the corner of Mayfield and Euclid, where you got that monument on the corner there. Mm-hmm. That's where the Jazz Temple was. Yeah. And Madison he paid people all over the country to come to him, particularly when he had his Jazz Temple, and his Jazz Temple around the corner of Mayfield and Euclid, where you got that monument.
So it's looping. That is Roland Mohammed. Oh, that is Roland Mohammed, who is a member of the Nation of Islam here in Cleveland, and he spoke with us a bit about his memories with the Jazz Temple. So what happens to the Jazz Temple? As I mentioned, it's in business for a little over a year, and shortly within that year, they suffer a series of bombings. The first two bombings allowed them to rebuild and reopen, make repairs and reopen. But the last bombing was so devastating that they were unable to survive. As you see here in this news clipping, right, police were unable to find the reasons for the bombing of the interracial House of Jazz, but found remnants of a bomb, right? And in other news articles, there's talk about how the Vice Squad was not really particularly interested in investigating the case, and questions around how much they may have been in collaboration with other community members in the Little Italy neighborhood around the issues there. And this is another community member, Charm Warren, who spoke with us. Let's see.
The Jazz Temple's not there because it was burned down. You know, it was burned down because I was told because of the location. It's in University Circle, close to Little Italy, and jazz is a music that was admired and supported by black and white alike. And so you have these black guys coming into the Jazz Temple with white women, and that just wasn't acceptable in 1962, 1963. Yes. So that demise.
You can hear me in the background. Right. These interviews were really quite captivating. And so let's see.
The Jazz.
Yep, that's a duplicate. My apologies. So then what does Winston do? Because as I said, he has a strong entrepreneurial spirit, right? These are a list of the companies or the businesses that he opened under his name, his business name, University Circle Properties Development, Inc. And there were so many of them. We heard a lot about the Scrumpty Dump. We heard, which is a cinema, sometimes an X-rated cinema, sometimes a regular cinema that debuted Shaft here in the Cleveland area. We learned a lot about the adversity and efforts that Winston had to go to in order to not have to just play X-rated movies, to actually get mainstream movies, and how the other movie theaters in the community really were blocking him for a period of time. We know that he had what was perhaps the first check cashing business in the area, and the generosity that he had in that space. Has anybody seen Harlem Nights? Harlem Nights, y'all know Harlem Nights, Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy. I told you guys Harlem Shuffle the other day. I was wrong. It's called Harlem Nights, my bad. Harlem Nights is old school after hours joint, but where you dress to the nines, and by the nines I mean like really, really suited and booted, as my dad used to say. This is all terminology that means absolutely nothing to you all. But nonetheless, if you could imagine an upscale gambling place during the time when gambling was prohibited, and all of your famous folks would go there, we had that in Cleveland. So after Winston leaves the corner of Mayfield and Euclid, and he gets more money, interestingly enough, during the Glenville riots, he's gambling furiously so much that night that he doesn't even know that the uprisings have occurred. And he walks out with enough money to buy the property. You all know where MLK, the new MLK library, sits. Directly across from it is the W.O. Walker building, and that whole block of 105 to 107. That is where Winston's empire of all of these businesses existed. And there's food. I remember Brave New World. When my dad used to tell me about Brave New World, I had no idea that it meant that there were women dancing in the windows, but apparently there were women dancing in the windows. Boondocks Restaurants in New Orleans, seafood, where the chef who operated that facility was like known in the community for being the best cook around. Winston had a strong, as I said, entrepreneurial spirit that caused him to open up a variety of different buildings and businesses. And I want you to hear from one of his former employees, another chef, Philip Clips, about that.
I'm trying to paint a picture and tell you, I'm trying to give you sequential information too. So I come down on the block. He brings me down on the block. But the way he did it was, when these buildings end, there's a space where they used to use as a driveway for deliveries to go in, because it was shaped like a court. There was a courtyard, okay? And so he closed that off. He put a roof from one building to the other. They built a roof from one building to the other. They leveled the floor and put ceramic tile in for the flooring. They put two tables about as wide as these chairs, table on that side with two chairs, tables on this side with two chairs. They lined the whole driveway, right? They built a barbecue pit in the back. We ran extension cords from the restaurant next door, or whatever was next door, to the back for our electricity, right? They put lights in. They would do, this is what his construction crew would do. These dudes was working all the time, Okay? All the time he had them doing stuff like this here. And they built the barbecue pit. They painted the walls red, if I remember, right? Nice looking little building. And they called it Boondocks.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
I
paint.
love talking with Mr. Clips in the tradition of storytelling in the Black community, being able to sit down with the elders and hear their memories come alive in this way and actually paint a picture for us was indeed a treat. Fast forwarding to this past August 23rd of 2025, we had the great pleasure of hosting, so fast forward from Andra being on Zoom, Andra comes to Cleveland to be our final in-person interview for the Oral History Project, and it was quite a moment. We co-sponsored this with the Cleveland Public Library and the President's Council, and we had over 200 registered to attend this event, and you can't really see, but this entire space at the MLK Library is packed out. And Andra tells a story about Winston and his generosity. I hope it's here.
What happened was Winston had Paymaster Money Exchange, and it was next door to the New Orleans restaurant. So the money exchange, the first of the month was really busy when people came to cash their checks and get their food stamps and all. So on this one particular day, Winston was in the back office, and the line of tellers was beyond a door, and all the tellers were behind glass and all that. So I was coming through the door, and I heard one of the tellers making a phone call to Winston, telling him that a young woman had just come and tried to cash a stolen check. So the next thing I know, Winston flew past me, almost knocked me down, ran out the door, and the woman had gone. And they said the woman was holding a baby in her arms. So I go out on the sidewalk in front of the restaurant, and I just saw Winston chasing the woman, and he caught up with her at the parking lot of National City Bank, which is now PNC Bank, right on the corner of 107th and Euclid. And all I saw was Winston standing there with her like this, shaking his hand at her, and she was crying, holding her baby. Then he turned for a moment, and then he turned back around and reached in his pocket and got a wad of cash and handed it to her.
Yeah.
He didn't press charges. He wasn't going to put her in jail. But he said, don't you ever come back here and hang no bad paper with me. So that's who he was. Yeah. What happened?
So Winston and his clashes with police are a constant thing. During the 70s, as you see here in these newspaper articles, there are police raids that repeatedly occur at his businesses. And he successfully manages to not be shut down during the 70s. He's fighting in court even as he's dealing with charges being brought against him. He's both the plaintiff and defendant at times. And then in 1983, the charges take a different sort of tenor. And we see that Winston ends up being convicted of a fraudulent $421 check. In our oral history recounting, community members are absolutely incredulous about, number one, the fact that he would bounce a $421 check, that he was absolutely good for $421, and that at the time that he was being pursued for $421, the city, the county, and the Cleveland Clinic were actively pursuing that property that he occupied. And so questions of eminent domain become a real issue for Winston, and he always says that they could have the property if they bought it fair and square, but he did not believe that it was fair for them to just take the property. And so he ends up being convicted of this bad check, and they can't find a place to take him locally. He spends time both in federal prison and in jail in Chillicothe. because everyone here in this area is kind of like, I don't know that we locked somebody up for $421. And he attempted to, pay the money. It was refused multiple times while he was incarcerated. 20 minutes, that's me. While he was incarcerated, that is when the last building goes down. But before the buildings go down, Winston is known for putting up billboard signs. And any lifelong Clevelanders in here? Anybody remember these billboard signs? I remember. I was 8, but I remember that my dad and my mom were like, wow, look at this, right? And he's basically saying to both the prosecutor, the police, and others, right, that he doesn't want to be targeted because he had the audacity to be a black man operating businesses. So here's the newspaper footage from the Plain Dealer of his last building, of the building going down on 105. He also opens another property on 105 in Euclid where Winston's was, and that goes down in 82. So I'm over time, and I would love to answer any questions. Oh, I should say one more thing. So this is the first phase of this project. I'm so sorry. And I did not show you our final product, which will be, I say a video, other people say a documentary of the oral history project, detailing the themes and the information that we got from communities so that their voices live on. The second phase, what I like to think of, Jarrett, as the second phase of this project is a virtual artificial re-rendering of what 105 looked like back in the 1970s. Yeah. So. And there's a lot of community interest in folks who are volunteering to help with that recreation. All right. Questions? None? Yes, hi, Kate.
I guess I just want to acknowledge what a lot of people in the room are thinking is those are so compelling, and I cannot wait to watch the film/documentary/video.
It's a video.
When it's time. How did you go about selecting the subjects for that? It seems like this person had a really big impact on the community. So how did you select people?
He did have a great impact. We started with that meeting in the law school's moot court room, and we reached out to people who attended and asked them if they would have any interest in sharing, based on what we heard in the room, the people who shared, right? Do you have any interest in being a part of our oral history project? And with, and so some people said yes, and then I just asked the question at the end of those interviews, and who else should we be talking to? Right? Between the responses to that and Andra's connection still to Cleveland and her brother's story, I could still be doing interviews, quite honestly. Yeah. Any other questions? No? All right. Thank you.
Okay, and today our final presenter is Dr. Erica Barcelos, who's a research assistant professor with material science and engineering. And she's going to talk to us about leveraging satellite imagery and health data to monitor the influence of ambient temperature on mortality rates in the United States. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. First of all, I want to just thank you all for the opportunity to present part of our work that we have worked with Ben in the past year, and it has, as you see, we diverge a little bit about on the goal of this project, but it was a lot of learning in this past year. And most of the work here was done by Olatunde, which is also one of the Freedman scholars that's going to present tomorrow. So I am a research faculty, just very briefly introducing myself, in material science and engineering department. I have a pretty diverse background. I did my PhD here in polymer science and also in Brazil in a dual degree program. And my main research area are geospatial data science, mostly focused on satellite imagery and big data analytics and multimodal data integration. And in our center, we do a lot of data management, where we help companies and national labs to manage their data in a more proper way. This presentation will be a little bit different than the other wonderful talks that you saw initially, because it's much more technical, and I apologize if it is too technical. I will try my best not to. I don't think I've ever presented to an audience that are not engineers, but I will do my best. So I usually start presentations with this slide just for some clarification on some key differences between using programming languages versus GIS. That's what we use mostly here in the library, with ArcGIS. Because I feel a lot of people think they are the same. They are synonyms. When we are doing geospatial analytics, we are doing GIS, and it's not necessarily the case. So here, I just highlight some of the key differences between those two approaches to analyze geospatial data. GIS, which is the traditional way, is the one where we use software. ArcGIS being the most commonly used, is a really nice tool. It's very user-friendly. We can easily visualize maps in layers. So if you have different data sets that you want to look at different things, you can, oh, I forgot to set my timer. So we can add those different layers of data set and see them in a map in a very easy and very pretty way. Some of the disadvantages associated to GUI and the software is, of course, the license cost, even though we don't have any costs here at CASE. Due to an agreement, I think, the library with Ares. There's some limited customization, and when you want to develop very sophisticated deep learning and statistical learning models with large data, you might struggle. Programming languages, on the other hand, which is basically what we use in our center, has the advantage of have a better support for deep learning, for handling large data sets, and advanced statistics. There is flexibility, customization, and of course, no cost. The main barrier for using programming languages is that you need to know or learn a little bit of code. And that actually represents a big barrier for using R and Python for geospatial analysis, and is not as intuitive and it's not straightforward as a GUI, as ArcGIS. So those are very important and complementary tools. We like ArcGIS when we want to do a quick visualization of all the different data sets that we have. And also it's great for collecting data and integrating data as well. So before this project, I never used ArcGIS, and I don't think anyone in our group has. We've been only using programming languages, and we found out that ArcGIS has a lot to offer, and it can enrich a lot of the projects we have. So Ben has been wonderful working with both Olatunde and I in this past year in introducing us ArcGIS, also QGIS, which is the open source version of ArcGIS, and showing us its capability, what it can do, how it can help, considering our problem, our project. He trained us, me, and my students, show us how to use the tool, download data, and all software and expertise consultation. It thanks to Ben's contribution. Now going to the actual project, just a little bit of background. We've seen lately that there's been an increase in ambient temperature in the recent years, and we want to investigate if there's a relationship with human health, and more specifically, mortality rates in the United States. So we are aware that that is depend on certain locations and communities, and that will be different if you look at some specific factors. And there are several factors that can contribute to temperature air temperature and heat wave frequency, especially, such as urbanization, changes in water body, land use, human activity, their solar irradiation, and many other factors. So our goal here was just investigate if there is a statistically significant relationship between mortality rates and air temperature in the United States. This was a pretty broad question, and because it's so broad, there were some limitations because there are so many different factors that can affect both mortality rates and air temperature that should be considered, such as the geography, age groups, external events, time of the year, heat wave frequencies, states, etc. Another challenge that we face is that, well, when I wrote this project, we were going to have access to a more granular mortality and public health data, and then we are going to work on that in this project. But it ended up not working at that time. We are very close now, but we are not there yet. So the only data that we had is the one that is available on CDC Wonder, that it is not granular enough for the purpose of this project. So we diversify a little bit this project and include a different question where we want to just have understand if there is a relationship between vegetation and air temperature, as we think it has, right? And we use first Ohio as a test case. This analysis was performed for 2 more states. And once we have the code now, it can be easily be expanded to the US scale. So the data sets we use, as I mentioned, for the mortality data, we use the CDC Wonder. We downloaded the data at county level per year. We use the year 2023 because it's the most recent year that we could find for mortality data. And then we collect all the other data sets for the same year. The air temperature was downloaded from the Google Earth engine. It's a satellite data set. And so we took all this mortality data and all the temperature data, and then we calculated the correlation considering all the US. And as we would expect, the correlation were pretty low, again, because there are many other factors that should be put into that equation, right, for correlations. So we incorporated other data sets. Those are mostly related to greenness of vegetation, which indicates how healthy the vegetation is. So the satellite Sentinel, in addition to air temperature, it also calculates different metrics for how healthy the vegetation is. So here are just some of them. NDVI and EVI, they show, they represent how green the vegetation is. Then we have the land surface temperature, which is the actual ground temperature. The leaf area index is just the volume of leaves in an ecosystem, and the NDWRI is the index for water bodies, but it can also detect moisture in soil. So this is the general approach in our center. We use a lot of open source data. Most of our satellite data comes from Google Earth Engine or IBM Environmental Intelligence Suite. They are all free. So we also have data from public sources such as USDA, EPA, CDC, where I got the mortality data. We take out this data set. It is ingested into our high-performance computing system. We verify this data. We process. The data requires a lot of processing since those data sets have different resolutions. We integrate the data, then we perform exploratory data analysis, and then we model the data. So this is the general framework. In this case, we haven't done modeling yet, so we stop here at DA. What's very important in this pipeline, and I'm just going to focus on this step in that diagram, is the verification. So verification is a set of principles that was proposed in 2016 by a group of scientists in Europe, and also industry and government, to improve the way that organizations handle data. So they proposed 16 principles to make data findable, accessible, reusable, and interoperable. And in all the projects we have, we verify our data, we make this data, especially in geospatial data that has different resolutions and different formats and size. It's very important that we harmonize and standardize this data. So once we collect this data, we clean the data, and then we harmonize them by creating what we call ontologies. So they are just a way to describe that data, where we have concepts as nodes and then the relationships between them as edges, and then we move this data into this format, and then we ingest in a new database, and then we integrate the data. Once we integrate all the data into a single data set, we start initial data exploration, where we just took all the variables, and as a reminder, we have two that are related to the temperature, which is air temperature, and the land temperature, and all the others are related to vegetation healthiness. So we take all these variables, and initially we just plot the distribution of each one of them for that year. And well, we can really make any conclusions here, especially if our analysis in Ohio, where we have seasonality, right? If you see the vegetation of the greenness of vegetation in the winter versus summer, it is very different. So it's very important that we consider seasonality, and that's why in the upcoming slides you will see that we split the data into seasons. So, but since we had that data, the mortality, we started doing some analysis on that data. So we took Ohio, these are all the Ohio counties, and this is the number of deaths in that year. So that's the total per year. And you see here, some counties have a higher mortality rate than the others, and those are also some of the most populated counties. So you cannot really tell if the mortality rate is really higher than, because they are also counties that have way more people. So we then took the total population for each county from the census, and then divided by the number of deaths. So we have a relative number that would say, just let us see if we still keep the trend of mortality rates for individual counties for that year. And we still see that some of those, the most populated counties are still the ones presenting the highest number of deaths. Of course, our more in-depth analysis is needed, as well as data set that accounts for different factors, but this is just to give us a general idea of how mortality is distributed in Ohio. Now we move to the vegetation analysis. So what you see here is the two plots at the top. They are showing the air temperature distribution, and on the right-hand side is the land surface for all different seasons for that year. So each bar plot, it represents the distribution of all the data for that year, for that season. And you see that's a similar trend, which you would expect for both air temperature and land temperature, where those middle lines, which represent the median of the distributions, they are higher in the summer and lower in the winter, with intermediate values between on spring and fall. The vegetation has a trend that is similar to air temperature. In warmer weathers, you usually have weather that is better for crops, and they become greener, and so they have higher indexes in the summer than in the winter, and then intermediate ones in the fall and in the spring. So here we are taking all the data in Ohio, and again, how does that change if you look at county levels? So here we plotted for all the counties. Might be a little harder to see, but the left-hand side is during summer, and the right one is during winter. You see that in general, the EVI, which is related to, the vegetation healthiness, is higher in the summer. Plants have more sunlight, so they have better conditions to grow, and there's less cloud cover. You see here that by the lake, the EVI and also the NDVI are lower, and this is because of the lake effect, and there are an interplay of different factors those areas, they are more populated as well, and there's also more clouds around this area. That makes the EVI being lower here. For air temperature, as you'd expect it to, they're pretty homogeneous in terms of the mean temperature, but you see that both in winter and in summer, there is a lower temperature by close to the lake, and that is again is due to the cooling effect from the lake. And there's also more warm and humid air masses that are coming from the Gulf of Mexico that raise a little bit the average temperature in the north, in the south. So we look at all those different metrics individually, but we can start comparing them. And here it's showing those violin plots are just box plots. They show the distribution of that variable for that season. So the orange ones are the air temperature, and the red ones are the land surface temperature, and the other ones are the vegetation related metrics. So you see that there is an average difference of 8 degrees between the land temperature and the air temperature, which is also something we would expect based on the heat capacity and transfer, air versus the ground. And on the vegetation side, you see that is widely distributed. The LAI is the amount of leaves for a certain ecosystem for a certain area. It's widely different in the summer compared to the winter because plants, they have different growing stages, so the leaves are present in different ways. And then we took all the variables that we had and we look at relationships between all those variables combined. So I know there is a lot of information here, but just to summarize, the metrics that are related to temperature, they have a higher correlation between each other, as you would think. And the ones related to vegetation, they have a higher correlation. Now, if we compare the air temperature with the vegetation index, you find that there is a moderate correlation. Here, just like before, we are taking all the data for the whole Ohio, but we also need to look at different seasons. Oh, right, and this is also for the entire year. We need to look at different seasons and different counties to see how that is changing. So, and here is some interesting results. So here in this map is showing the strength of the relationship between the EVI, which is the plant healthiness, and the air temperature. We would expect always a positive correlation as you have a warmer weather, you have plants that are healthier and greener, and that's where we see most of the Ohio. However, by the lake region, we see a negative correlation. And that is usually due to the excess of cloudiness that we have, due to the lake effect, where the cold air masses from Canada, they move through the Lake Erie warm waters, and then they pick up moisture and heat and lead the formation of heavy clouds and leading to more snow events. In the summer, we see something different. We still see most of the counties having a positive correlation, but some counties more at the southeast, they have a negative correlation. And again, we will need to be more granular to really understand why that is happening. But some of the reasons might be the higher temperatures that we have in some of those counties. When we have higher temperature, there is a moisture stress. It means that the plant is the high temperature leads to evapotranspiration of plants that might be higher than what they can intake, and that leads to this negative correlation effect. So just in summary of this work so far, we could see that there is a moderate relationship between air and land temperature. There are different ecological factors that can justify those differences, and they are highly dependent on county, seasonality, among many other factors. Also, those results are based on averages per county. So we averaged this data on a Google Earth engine and then made a data set out of it. Ideally, we would use the raw data, which has a much higher resolution. Some of those data sets have 100 resolution, so you would have more accurate results. And, well, then there might be errors due to this average processing. So moving forward is we should include some of those factors, go more granular in the resolution. This is what I just mentioned. So we'll have more accurate and precise estimates. And our main goal was to gain just some initial insights and trends between vegetation metrics and air temperature. And now we can develop new research questions that go more in deep and more granular to find out why some of those results were seen. And also, we plan to continue this collaboration. We are getting finally some more good health data that we could develop the project that was initially proposed. So we plan to continue this work here with Ben and also leverage more of the ArcGIS functionalities to diversify our analysis. Well, and that's my final slide. Just acknowledgement to HPC, where we did most of this analysis, the Freedman Center, and then STLE, that's where I'm from. Thank you.
Yeah, you mentioned ArcGIS and QGIS, and did you try using some of the open source QGIS? And can you speak a little bit about
yes,
the work between the two?
ArcGIS has a much nicer interface than QGIS, and it's much easier to use too. And it has a lot of the functionalities already embedded in the program. In QGIS, you have to install all the individual plugins. I used QGIS before. I tried to use before, but it didn't go much further. I got a little bit frustrated, and then I stopped. And then I met Ben, and we started working with ArcGIS a little bit. Well, QGIS is still an open source. It's still good for visualizing data, but it's require more work from the user, I feel.
Thank you for helping Ben's case with ArcGIS. So, as you talked about using the HPC, and I was curious, were you using it primarily for data cleaning and analysis, and then you use the data, put it back into ArcGIS, or did you have a system where you could actually use ArcGIS within, or QGIS within the HPC environment?
Everything we did here was, well, the original project, when we started working with it, we would meet Ben, and then a lot of the data download and integration, he'll help me do it on ArcGIS, and then part of the analysis and modeling doing on our HPC. And then the goal was to put it back to ArcGIS and see the modeling. And then in Olatunda's presentation tomorrow, he did it. He used HPC with ArcGIS. So it's way more advanced than this presentation, you see, this work. Any more questions? Well, thank you very much.
I just want to thank the fellows again for sharing their questions and ideas and discoveries with us. Let's give them another round of applause. And as one group of fellowships comes to an end, we have another group beginning this semester. Oh, thank you. We have another group of fellows beginning this semester. Dr. Alexis Block, who is assistant professor in the Department of Electrical, Computer, and Systems Engineering, and the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, and the Department of Computer and Data Science, is going to be leading a project that explores the central role of touch in human relationships. And they're going to be creating and curating a labeled data set of video clips, which will depict diverse social touch interactions, from supportive hugs to celebratory high fives, across a range of social, emotional, and cultural contexts. And these are going to be used as a foundational resource for developing emotionally intelligent robotic systems. We also have Gaurav Datta, who's an assistant professor of Department of Computer and Systems Engineering. And him and his team are going to be exploring how to make large language models a practical choice on university or public-facing computing resources by developing a novel method for compressing the key value cache using Tucker decomposition, so they can increase memory efficiency and have these tools be integrated into a wider range of transformer architectures that are already in use. So they'll have a greater application options for LLMs and research infrastructures. And finally, Dr. Kelly McMahon, the Lucy Adams Leffingwell Professor in the Department of Political Science. It's going to be working with her team to employ artificial intelligence and machine learning to create high-quality environmental policies data sets, which will comprehensively document environmental policies that national governments have adopted or not in all countries in the world to address environmental problems such as non-renewable energy, transportation, fuel oil consumption, CO2 emissions, deforestation, and other ecosystem degradation questions. So there's some really great tool development ideas in this year's fellowships. So thank you very much for coming. And, one more thing that I wanted to add before you go. Normally we have student fellowships as well as part of the Freedman Fellowships program. And this year is our last group of student fellows, and we're switching over to a program called Freedman Scholars. And Freedman Scholars is an opportunity for graduate and undergraduate students at Case to work in the Freedman Center through the course of a year and sort of gain experience in different areas of digital scholarship and bring their expertise to the library to sort of expand our capabilities as well. So if anyone here or anyone you know might be interested, there's a little flyer hanging on the wall back there by the lab sign with a QR code. So if you could share that, we'd appreciate it. And thank you again for coming.